We've talked about positive interactions. We've talked about bidding to connect in ways in which we can get turned towards. Um, and I've talked about the ratio, right? The ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions. So ideally, 20 to 1 on a normal, just getting through life, and a 5 to 1. Positive always being more, right? 20 to 1, 20 positives to 1 negative, 5 to 1, 5 positives to 1 negative in times of conflict. Now, I forever ever was just like, okay, it's positive and it's negative. And then I think a couple years into doing my work, I realized there's a lot of neutral interactions that are happening. And that kind of came at the same time. I feel like this kind of notion and hearing about roommate syndrome and hearing clients say we feel more like roommates, it all started to like converge to this place for me of like, oh, it's neutrality. It's neutral. We're having so many neutral interactions throughout the day that they're not necessarily adding deposits into our bank account. They're not taking anything away, depending. It's not adding, maybe taking a little bit away. And then if our ratio positive to negative is a 1-to-1, then we're like neutral, and 1-to-1. Those neutrals often are going to fall more into a negative category, especially over time, right? A neutral interaction, especially when we get into negative sentiment, even like a neutral bit of engagement can be taken as a criticism and viewed negatively because we don't have that positivity built up. So we start to just assume that what our partner is saying has negativity to it. It has criticisms in it. So when we have that much neutrality, we are not being intentional or mindful. And sometimes the neutrality might even just be avoidance. So we're not having harder conversations in fear of what kind of like result will that end in will that result in some level of conflict. So neutrality. So let's talk a little bit about the problem with neutrality, which is kind of what I said, is that it isn't actively positive. It is just kind of doing the bare minimum, really. We're just sharing space. We're not really fighting. Maybe there's some affection, but I doubt it. It's all logistics. So the interactions are about where the kids are, who's picking them up, did the mortgage get paid? Are we going to refi? We need to get this painted. The car needs to go in. Maybe we didn't fight and we felt like we worked really well as a team. It was all kind of neutral. It doesn't awaken the soul. It's not sexy. Neutral interactions are not sexy interactions. So they're not necessarily fun and they're not joyful. They're just neutral. And they probably are neutral because of how distracted we are. Kind of going back to the phones and the distractions and how easy then these interactions are. We're talking while looking at something else. So it's hard to create or to show the other person that this is positive, like I'm trying to connect with you when I'm asking you a question about pickup and I'm on my phone. We can also spend the whole day together and have nothing but like neutrality. So we've spent all day and haven't had really any positive interactions, I would say. We've had interactions, but again, they've been neutral. Can you look up the directions? What did you want? Where did you want to stop for food? What time do we need to be back for the kids? And then maybe as you're, hanging out, you talk a little bit more, but it's nothing connecting. It's nothing with depth. It is all about logistics. So it's, very neutral. So, I would say that both, like, actually just talking about logistics is like a real neutral type of interaction. And also, the absence of being really intentional and creating the opportunities for positive connection. It kind of blinds us. Like, if we think our neutral interactions are actually positive, then we're not working really that much harder to create the positive. So, I want you to kind of look around and scan your relationship to see, what are our interactions? Do they tend to be more neutral? Am I thinking about this interaction in the ways in which I can make this positive? If I did, what would that look like? Right? How could I be mindful and think of ways to create positive interactions? And if we're having a lot of neutral interactions, what can I do to even take some of that neutrality and make it more positive? Because, like I was saying, the issue and the problem with neutrality can very easily turn into, negative interactions, because they feel empty. And so if we're not having that positive connection, then the emptiness can lead way into hurt. Because then we're not really being mindful of, I haven't thought about if this would affect my partner or not. So even this neutral interaction can actually create this negative trigger in our partner. And when we're just in neutral, right, what are we doing? We're like auto. We're just cruising. So we have to really understand that just the absence of negative interactions does not then equate a positive one. It just means you didn't take any, withdrawals out, but you didn't add anything when you had just the absence of negativity. We need to be so mindful. And that is what I am finding more and more, is we're not present. We're not mindful. Distractions get in our way. We probably have neutral interactions with most people in our life, except when we get online and we're mean. Or maybe we might be really pumped on someone too, but like with our partner, even if like someone had a nice outfit on, and it's really important to say something. And we think the thing, but we need to say the thing. And it's like, well, I didn't say she looked bad. Well, okay. Like, that's what the excuse would basically be. We didn't tell her she looked nice. You didn't tell him he looked nice. Well, I didn't tell him they looked bad. Okay. And I think they look good. Again, okay, but they need to hear it. We need to hear these things. We need to be creating positive connection, positive interaction. We need to be mindful about ways in which we create this. So you might be someone who needs to write stuff down. Like, what are the ways today or this week that I am going to create intentional, positive interactions with my partner? Because I can guarantee there's going to be neutral. And I can guarantee at some level there's going to be negative. So we can be mindful about trying to not have so many negative, and be mindful about being intentional and creating the positives. But what we can guarantee is there's going to be neutrality. 100%. We have a very big part of our life that's kind of boring, that requires responsibility, and that requires conversations about that responsibility. And while there are parts, and I would tell you, and I would push you and say there could be some really great positive connection. I don't know if you're there yet. If you're there, awesome, but a lot of us aren't. So that neutrality, if that's all that there is, and we don't have the practice in creating positive connections even through that neutral or through that neutrality, we got to work on this other stuff. Like, we got to start here first, which is just, how do I intentionally create positive interactions with my partner? If I can pay attention to the neutrality, is there something I can do to make some of those neutral interactions feel more positive? And also, being aware of the negative. Can we repair that? And we'll talk more about that as we get into conflict. But remember, right now we're in the positive perspective level, which is telling us that if we have the first 3 levels in fairly good working order, we should be in the positive perspective. But we can't just be like, and we're in it. Like, I find this level, we never talk about the ways in which we work on this level. It's just a give me. If those first 3 levels, love, maps, fondness, admiration, and bidding, are doing well, I've been taught positive perspectives in place all the time, and I don't believe that to be true. Many times when couples have questionnaires, right, that they've filled out, and all those first 3 levels show up as strengths, I still see them showing up with negative sentiment. So it tells me there's more going on, that we really need to be intentional and mindful about creating positive connections. We need to understand that it isn't just positive and negative, that there is neutrality. And that within the positive perspective level in and of itself, we have to do work. We have to remain vigilant. When we start to think, scan for, create negative schemas of our partner, we need to say, okay, well, what is this about? Like, is there real negativity about my partner? Are there things that I'm really unhappy with? And we need to talk about this. I can't just create this schema and make assumptions and then start punishing them for them. I haven't even told them the things that I'm upset about. I'm not even giving them the chance to do anything with that. We got to explain these things to one another. Right? Like, it is so important to be like, oh my God, everything my partner says is pissing me off. What is going on? You're a negative sentiment. You're filtering everything through negativity. So we need to say, okay, what do I need to do? I need to start scanning for, I need to write down, I need to think about ways to be positive. And I also need to really pay attention to that silent killer of marriages, which is the roommate syndrome and the neutral interactions. Too much neutrality will take the marriage to a place where it's no longer recognizable as far as romance and passion and fun and joy and sexiness. So we have to be aware. There will be neutrality. I'm not saying don't ever have neutrality, only be hot and cold. But the mindfulness is the biggest piece here. Are there ways that I can be more intentional about creating positive interactions? My answer to you right now is, of course there is. If you're saying there's not, well, come on. Let's be real. Yes, there are. Of course there are. And what am I going to do about it? So again, you're going to have an awesome opportunity to create your plan and your goals and what's the intention behind those goals and how am I going to hit those goals in order to be aware of, mindful of this positive perspective and how important it is for us to stay in positive perspective. And it's okay because I've oscillated in my marriage in positive and negative, but the key for me has been I'm always able to recognize and notice when I'm in negative sentiment. I'm like, why is everything he's doing negative? That can't be him. It can't be all him. There's something else going on. And then I do my own work and I start to say the positive things and I look for, okay, but there's something that's really upsetting me. Do I need to talk about it? But taking that time to like think about it versus like, well, I'm mad at them, so they must have done something, so I'm going to continue to be pissed, versus like, something's up here. That's what I need you to do. Pay attention to that stuff so that we can work to say, okay, well, I want this to be more positive. So if I'm frustrated, we need to figure out how to express those frustrations and work on those frustrations. But we also need to figure out how are we going to create more positive, intentionally positive interactions in our relationship. So have fun on the homework because it is, again, just kind of being mindful, paying attention, putting pen to paper so that you can kind of see what it is you're thinking and how much does this match reality too. So enjoy as always. Watch for those blocks, take notes of them so they can be useful to you in the future. All right.